It was about 4 in the morning one Saturday, and I was driving to work down the interstate. I was in the middle lane moving pretty quickly because I was already running a bit late to work that morning. So when I noticed a car in my left mirror catching me pretty quickly, I was almost alarmed. I had to already be going like 75 to 80, so he had to be going anywhere from 90 to 100. The car quickly caught up to me. It was a gray Honda Accord coupe. I took a look into the car, curious to see who was behind the wheel. Even though it was still dark out, I could see the driver looking back at me as he passed. Then I noticed someone in the back seat too. It was a young woman who appeared to be banging on the back window. Initially, I didn't understand. I assumed it was a girl messing with me or whatever. It's usually not a person's first instinct to assume something sinister is going on. But when I saw the driver apparently push her down under the window and the car swerve at the same time, then I knew something was wrong. That woman was trying to get someone's attention and call for help. I started to speed up a little bit and got behind them so I could keep up. I could see the driver continuously reach into the back of the car with a swinging motion. He looked to be hitting her. I could see her arms flailing in the back of the car. I was in complete shock. I was actually witnessing a kidnapping right in front of me. As I was behind them, matching their speed of about 95 miles per hour, I took out my phone and called 911. As I was on the phone, the car in front of me, brake lights lit up, and he started to slow down to a gradual stop. He definitely noticed that I saw what was going on and thought that I was following him. As much as I wanted to save that woman's life, I didn't know if the driver was armed with a gun or not, so I pulled around him and floored it. I wanted to keep behind them though, so I pulled off the next exit, but didn't go entirely up the exit ramp. I waited for the car to pass by down the highway, then I drove over the grass and back onto the highway and began to floor it to catch up to the car, all while still talking to 911, telling them where we were, what kind of car they were in, and how fast we were going. I was easily going 90 again to catch up to them. As I caught up to the car again, going an insane speed, he noticed me again even before I got too close. He started to brake in front of me again. I tried to go around him, but he cut me off. I had to stop. He got out of his car and started running towards my car with something in his hand. And in a panic, I threw the car in reverse until he stopped chasing me. Then I put it back in drive before he could get back in his car, and I drove quickly past him. The 911 operator told me there was a state trooper not far ahead from our location, and to just keep driving until I passed him. The man in the car behind me continued to follow me, both of us still going at an insane 90 miles per hour plus. I felt the weight of 1,000,000 pounds released off my shoulders when the flashing blue and red lights appeared in my rear-view mirror behind the car chasing me. With me in front of him and the cop behind him, he didn't have much maneuverability, and he quickly pulled over onto the grass. I pulled over in front of him, but with at least 2 cars worth of space between us, because I still didn't know how this was about to go down. Luckily, the cop with his gun drawn got the guy out of the car with his hands up. By then I got out and watched the whole thing. He was on the ground in cuffs now, laying on his stomach. Another police car showed up and another cop entered the scene. The woman in the back of the car was let out. She was badly beaten, in tears, and extremely ecstatic to be saved, as she kept praising me for saving her life. The driver of the car was her ex-boyfriend, who'd come to her house, and when she refused to talk to him, he attacked her, grabbed her, and threw her in the back of his car, which had the child locks on it. It's scary to think where he might have been taking her, or what he was planning to do to her, if I or anybody else didn't witness her screaming for help in the back of the car. It happened on the night that I was the designated driver among my group of friends after a party. My friends were Michael, Eddie, and Daniela. We live in the country, so anytime we wanted to go to the bars or parties, we'd have to travel long distances. That's why it's such a big deal for one of us to be sober enough to drive. We were driving down the 513, which is an unlit highway littered with the occasional house or two, but mostly forest. The road leads to town where most of the bars are. This story takes place on the way back from town. Daniela started to cry that she had to piss really bad. I told her she'd have to wait a while longer, but not gonna lie, I started to get the urge as well. That mixed with the fact that Daniela was now screaming in her drunken fit, I figured, why not pull over to the side of the road and just piss somewhere in the woods? Daniela got out first and disappeared into the crops on one side. Mai went to the opposite side of the road and slightly into the woods, just because I'm the type of person who can't have people watching me piss. I finished first and got back in the car. Eddie and Michael were singing to the roaring rad music playing on the radio, while I pretty much just sat there in silence, growing impatient. My two drunk friends didn't seem to find anything strange about the fact that Daniela had now been gone for 5 minutes, so I got back out to call her name. Michael has a much stronger voice than I, so when he screamed for her, it would be impossible for her not to hear. But still, she didn't call back. I didn't want to go in those crops, but I kind of felt like I had to, since she's my friend, and I was the most aware at that moment. I forced Michael to come with since I was afraid to go in alone. Eddie stayed in the car. He was just too far gone at this point. With the flashlight from my glove box, Michael and I pushed our way through the thick, overgrown crops, walking in the only direction we could think of, straight away from the car. Michael was calling Daniela's name while laughing his ass off. I can understand why he was finding it funny in his condition, but I just wanted to make sure she was all right and get home. Over the sounds of our own footsteps brushing crops aside and Michael's laughter, I heard something else in the near vicinity. I put my arm out to Michael's chest to halt him. Now all that could be heard was the night breeze blowing through the crops. "What is it like?" Michael whispered, to which I responded, "Shh." That Michael called out Daniela's name again. I joined in, figuring it was just her trying to sneak up on us and scare us. And again the footsteps stopped, so we walked a little deeper into the crops. That's when we came to a narrow clearing stretch. I don't know much about crops and farming or anything, but it seemed to be some little stretch for people to walk through. It was probably the width of 2 people, just enough to walk through. I looked to my left as far down as the light would let me see, and then to the right, I could hear 3 footsteps, and then a couple crops pushed outward into the opening as somebody stepped into view. At first, my light was only revealing their legs, so by default under the circumstances, I assumed it was Michael. However, the light revealed it to be not Michael, but instead some random man who I'd never seen before. His facial features weren't clear enough to give a good description, but he didn't look friendly. I ran for it back in the only direction I remembered coming from. I guess I ran so fast that it only took me about 10 seconds to make it back to the car. Eddie was passed out in the car at this point, so I didn't bother trying to get help from him. I was honking the horns again Michael's and hopefully Daniela's attention. The sight of that man just disturbed me. I didn't know if he owned this land or not. I continued to land the horn until finally Michael came out of the crops, dragging Daniela, who seemed to be out cold. I got out to help him lift her back inside of the car and plop her on the seat. Michael pointed out the gash on her forehead as if she had been struck with a heavy, sharp object. Michael seemed to be sobering up pretty quickly due to the situation. He advised I drive to the nearest hospital, which was 10 minutes away. The drive there was not fun. It was full of panic and yelling. We brought Daniela in to have her wound treated as soon as possible. It was only then that Michael explains to the nurses, not me, that he saw some guy dragging her collapsed unconscious body before fleeing deeper into the crops after noticing him. He never mentioned that in the car, but it made perfect sense now. That man in the crops with us that night did this. Daniela was awake after she got all stitched up, and she had no recollection of the entire night, from the moment we stepped into the party to the moment she got struck in the head.
What I'm about to tell you is the strangest experience I've ever lived through. My name is Mary. My friend Carol and I were driving from Florida to New Jersey a few months back. We were coming back from visiting a few friends who went to school down there. It was a really fun time, but Carol and I had to get on with our lives. The drive was supposed to be fun, a little road trip, just us two, with a bunch of snacks, music, and time to catch up on all the things we hadn't talked about in ages. In hindsight, it probably would have been a better idea to stay one more night at our friend's place, but I wanted to get home. We were planning to do the whole drive in one shot. We drove through the night and into the next morning. A few hours after the sun came up, my back started to ache from sitting in the same position for so long. I told Carol we should pull over somewhere for a break, grab some gas, and maybe find something to eat before we get back on the road. We drove past a few more exits before ultimately getting off at what claimed to be a lively, touristy town. For the life of me, I can't remember what the actual name of the town was. It was one of those places that you'd expect to be a tourist stop, with signs pointing to attractions and promises of unique shops or local history. But even as we pulled in, I felt something was off. The streets were empty, and the buildings looked like they'd seen better days. A little too worn down for a place supposedly catering to visitors. It's hard to explain the feeling, but it was the kind of place where you could sense something was wrong without actually knowing what. I'm sure everyone kind of knows what I'm talking about, but you ever driven through one of those ghost towns where all the shop signs are still up, but everything is clearly abandoned? Yeah, that's what it felt like. Only it was weirder. Since things weren't actually abandoned, they just looked that way. It wasn't your typical haunted kind of vibe, but strange enough that it's been on my mind ever since. The first stop was the convenience store. We actually had to drive for a decent while before entering the heart of the town, or whatever you'd call it. We pulled in to stretch and grabbed some refreshments. The two of us headed inside. It looked pretty normal in there, actually. Carol was looking for a specific drink she wanted, but quickly grew frustrated when she realized they didn't have it. She's a bit of a drama queen, so I indulged her tantrum and agreed to go somewhere else. I still wanted to get my Gatorade, though, so I walked up to the counter with it to pay. The cashier was a woman about 30 or 35, if I had to guess. She had dark brown hair and was on the taller side. Again, all very normal. The only reason I remembered her features was because she was wearing suspenders, which I wasn't used to seeing. I paid for my drink and we left. Carol pointed to another convenience store across the street, so we figured we'd give it a shot. When we walked into the second store, I literally felt my stomach drop. The cashier behind the counter looked exactly like the girl who'd been working at the first place. Same hair, same face, same height, same everything. I froze, staring at her. I could tell I was making her uncomfortable. Eventually, I asked if she had a twin or a sister or something. She gave me a weird look, almost skeptical, and told me that she didn't have a twin and that she was an only child. She narrowed her eyes and told me that that was a strange thing to ask, which I guess it was. I tried to explain myself, but she didn't say anything after that. I felt this weird sense of déjà vu and backed out of the store, dragging Carol along with me. Carol was confused, but I explained myself and asked her if she noticed the same thing. She said she didn't remember what the other cashier looked like, and that I was probably just tired from driving for so long. I knew what I saw, though, and told her I'd prove it. We ran back to the first convenience store, but when we got there, the girl inside looked nothing like who I remembered seeing. She was a completely different person. She was short, with light hair, and looked middle-aged. There's absolutely no chance anyone could have confused her for the other cashier. She didn't even look like she was in the same age range. It was as if I had imagined the whole thing. Carol told me just to forget about it and that I was tired, but I insisted that I wasn't imagining things. Eventually, I had no choice but to let it go. I was eager to get out of there, but we needed gas. We pulled into the first gas station we saw, which was void of people. It was completely empty, just our car, the pumps, and a small building at the back where you would pay.
We were literally the only car in the entire lot. The two of us walked inside. Carol took her sweet time looking for her drink, but of course it wasn't there either. I paid, waited for her, and we left. We couldn't have been in there for more than a few seconds. As we walked out, I again felt a weird feeling in my gut. What had not 2 seconds ago been a completely empty gas station was now packed to the brim. The place was overflowing with people. It was the strangest thing. Cars filled every single pump, and there were even some lined up as if we'd wandered into rush hour at the busiest station in the state. All the parking spots in the back lot were full too. To make matters worse, it felt like everyone was eyeing us down as we walked to our car. I don't think I've ever felt more uncomfortable by people staring at me. This time, Carol agreed that something bizarre was going on. I could tell that both of us felt the same eerie suspicion. It was like we'd left reality for a second, and when we came back, something had shifted. We decided to say screw it on the food and just find our way back to the highway. I didn't have much of an appetite at that point anyway. Back on the road, we didn't say much for a while. I wasn't scared, but I just had a bad feeling in my gut. I'm not sure how to even explain it. As we got slightly further away, Carol and I talked about how weird that had just been. As we were talking, a car passed us, a Toyota Sienna with a cracked windshield. I remember it distinctly because the windshield had this big spiderweb crack running through it, and the side was scratched up pretty bad. It was kind of hard to miss. Carol made a joke about it, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Just as we were starting to loosen up, everything came crashing down again. About 10 minutes later, the exact same minivan passed us again. We were 100% sure of it. Again, it was impossible to miss with this massive crack in the windshield. How was that even possible, though? We had been driving in a straight line at a pretty fast clip. There's no way it could have gotten ahead of us. But the odds of passing two different Siennas with identical cracks in the windshield were insanely slim. Carol started saying, "Oh my God," over and over again, and I could tell she was on the verge of a panic attack. She told me to speed up, which I did. I was dying inside, but I had to keep it together as the driver and for Carol's sake. I wanted nothing more than to get back on the highway and leave that place behind forever. I glanced down at the GPS and saw that an hour had somehow passed since we had left the gas station, which was virtually impossible. I wanted to tell Carol about it, but I didn't know if she could take any more weird stuff. My heart was in my throat, but I just kept driving. Part of me wondered if the GPS was going to start taking us in circles. We finally got back on the highway, and the nightmare ended there. By the time we got home, however many hours later, it felt like we were waking up from some strange, disjointed dream. Not kidding, that whole experience still feels like a dream when I think back to it. People usually look at me strangely when I tell them this story. I still can't explain what happened there, and I don't expect any kind of explanation. I've tried doing research online about weird occurrences in places like that, and I've actually found a handful of stories that are similar to mine. The weirdest thing about it was the feeling in my gut that I still have trouble describing. Until that point, I really didn't know what it meant to get a bad vibe from something. It's like every bone in your body is begging you to notice that something's wrong. I never want to get that feeling again.